All right, Jeff Grant here on the show from Sand and Sea Investments and Real Estate. How's it going?
Really well. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. So you're one of the top real estate firms well, I should say the country. Maybe it's the country, but I know but San Diego. And you started in the business back in the crash, right?
Right in the middle of the crash. I mean, impeccably bad timing. Yeah. Of course, at the
or good timing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got the hard part out of the way, right?
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first started it, I was an active broker, as I still am. And I thought, how am I going to compete with all of these talented, successful, well-known agents and brokers? And fortunately, that time there was such a change in our market with, we'll just call it distressed. That it presented, a really neat opportunity, which, John, I owe you a lot of credit for that.
I owe you too, because, man, who else was going to come in and do short sale?
Yeah, the two H's in the name. I have to explain that to people still, and the idea that at the beginning, no one wanted to talk about it.
Well, it was a little bit embarrassing, right?
It was a little embarrassing.
To short sell their house, they didn't have any equity. They didn't have a way to get out from under their upside down mortgage. So.
And then remember, by the time it was wrapping up, I mean, people were almost proud to say that I was smart enough to walk away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was a challenging start, but it came with big passion because I lost one of my homes through short selling.
Yeah.
Rather,
Same
it
here.
was saved. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I realized how beneficial it was. And I realized how unscrupulous the collections were going on behalf of the banks or the servicers. So I really felt a passion for finding resolve and helping people. And really, that's where it all began.
That's right. Tell me or tell our listeners about your company now a little bit.
Yeah. So Sand and Sea Investments, I'd put us in the boutique category, meaning we're not focused on agent recruitment as much as we are, creating a culture and a group of professionals that truly want to help.
Yeah.
The word concierge gets lumped around way too often, but that really is kind of our approach. We want to be a resourceful expert and advisor that is not there to self-promote as much as we are to generate results, to protect our clients, and to give them unique options.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun. We have an office in Carlsbad. We have an office in Point Loma. Geographically, we're all around the county. There are 10 agents. And again, I'm a pretty active broker myself, not only as the broker of record, but I really enjoy it. And as time goes on, it's gotten more fun. Yeah. It's been now 12 years and we're having, a lot of repeat business and meeting friends of friends. It's become very rich in experience and that organic growth.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, and the name, I mean, Sand and Sea, it's an investments, right? So it's not just like you said, it's more of like a concierge or like consulting, and you're talking to, I'm sure, people about, when you say repeat business, you're talking to people about, maybe buying more investment properties, right? And putting their money, as we know, with inflation right now, it's like, if you bought real estate, you made a hell of an investment this last couple of years and even before. But tell us about that side, like the investment side. Do a lot of your clients, are they just buying investment properties too? Or?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up that word. When I first brought that word into the company name, my intent was just kind of playing off the idea that people's biggest investments generally are their homes.
Yep, true.
And I read another stat, it was 70% of millionaires generated that money in real estate.
Yep.
So that was the idea. Of course, there's been countless times where people are asking, what sort of investments do you gather or present? And on that note, we have access to some pretty cool syndicated investments.
Is that more commercial?
Yeah, a lot more commercial. Residential, we'll do some fractional participation. It's really nice because it obviously raises your price point when you have other people involved.
True.
But the residential income is good. Of course, in this market with prices where they are, really it's very challenging to buy cash flow immediately.
Right.
Generally, you sit on the asset for a year, maybe two, raise rents, pay the loan down. But gosh, it's just been on the up and up and up. And considering what I went through 12 years ago, losing my own place,
right,
I'm a little nervous it's going to change, right? But the fundamentals are there. There's no reason to think it will.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because I often have people ask me, I'm just waiting, or they'll ask me, is it gonna crash? Is it gonna go down? And they're like, I'm just waiting for the next dip, and I'm just like scratching my head, going, it should dip, but what's gonna make a dip?
Totally.
Like all the things that are normally, that would make a dip, like supply, right? Too much supply, or obviously rates if they go up, but can they go up? How far can they go up? Because our national debt is insane. So I mean, if rates go way up, it's gonna crash our whole economy. But
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on what you think could cause the next dip or crash?
Yeah, I think it'll be something a little more global.
Yeah.
I think I've been saying for a while that I expected inflation to increase, and of course that's happening. I'm a little concerned with that.
Yeah.
But I feel like putting all of the newspaper kind of observations aside, that people are losing their jobs and there's this big contingent of the workforce that are quitting, the clients that I'm speaking with are doing very well.
Yeah.
Whatever.
There's a bigger divide, I think, than ever in America. Well, maybe not ever, said. But definitely in our generation.
Yeah. Now, so I think because supply is just so much lower than demand right now, and my average client seems to have a high affordability.
Right.
I have no reason to think it's going to change. I think interest rates rising is probably one of the top three if I had to pick one. But experiencing what we have with this whole COVID climate, it's just been so unpredictable now.
Right.
But looking at the basic stats in the residential market, looking at supply, looking at the ratio of sell versus list price, and then looking at the average days on market, it has been a seller's market for so many years.
Right.
And the potency and power of the buyers that I'm working for right now are higher and greater than it's ever been.
Yeah. They're like, what do I do with my money? And
totally.
They're like, I got to buy assets. I got to buy
totally.
real estate. And I think also interest rates, if they go up, and they will go up a little bit, they have to at some point, half of the buyers are cash. So it won't even affect them.
Agree. I totally agree. And I'm just amazed how many people have a lot of money right now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to much matter.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. And so, yeah, rates will rise. Who knows how much, but like, I think there's going to be a cap on that because of what I just said about the economy, and just like they're kind of stuck with a situation where they can't raise rates too much. Otherwise it'll really be bad.
But before you go on, do you mind if I ask you,
Yeah.
what do you think would be the culprit if you had to pick something in the next couple of years that maybe create a market correction?
Supply change. So we're having supply chain issues, right? If there was a supply chain, meaning the demand drops somehow, and the only way I could see that is all of a sudden people don't want to own, if there was a reason, maybe government reason, or if there was I hate to say it, this is probably going to be controversial, but if there was a lot of deaths in the world, in America, like if there's just a huge amount of death, whether it's, like another wave of a worse disease, whether it's who knows what, I don't even want to say it because I don't want to jinx anything, but that could be that, but like we talked about, the main things that normally do that in an economy are things that we don't think could happen yet. We're like the interest rates, the cash buyers, the supply. Like builders are literally not building. Yeah. Right? They're not. I mean, I have a friend, Kevin Elmore. He was on the podcast before. He's a smart guy. He's been working with a builder, and like a lot of foreigners are buying up land. As we know, Bill Gates has bought up a bunch of land.
Yeah.
Builders are having a hard time buying big pieces of land that they can develop. Obviously, there's a density change right now, and I think they want to take, like, there's a change from R1 to R2, 3, 4, all that. And so what I think is going to happen is a lot of especially in the inner cities and the suburbs, like close to the cities, is there's just going to be, people are going to tear down existing houses, build 2, or tear down, build 4, build, like you said, with the building, like go up, higher buildings, more floors, condos, and so I don't know. And what if they turned like some of the retail malls into living, things, or or office buildings into living spaces? Like that could change the dynamic of the supply. But I think that's where it'd have to be. It'd have to be a massive supply change in a fundamental way that we aren't really seeing, you know.
Yeah, I like that. It's a really good point. It's interesting to balance the kind of migration from the high density areas, urban environments out to, you know, wanting bigger parcels. And I've experienced that firsthand the last couple of years. But now they're allowing those same parcels to be subdivided. And I'm anxious to see how it pans out. I remember when it first was announced, people got really excited about, I'm going to buy an R1, 5,000 square feet, turn it into a quadplex. But I think by them requiring that one of the units is owner occupied is really what's going to stop it from blowing up.
Yeah,
right?
Because they can't just turn it into a bunch of rentals.
Right.
You know, at least in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, you live there, and then you can probably eventually switch. I don't know what the rules are.
Just keep your mail coming there and go somewhere else, right?
people figure stuff out, you know.
That's the truth.
But yeah, I don't know. It's the $1 billion, $1 trillion question is what's going to be the next crash? What's going to be the next? I like what you said with global. I think there's a lot going on globally that, you know, we could talk probably a whole other podcast about globally what's happening. But you know, I think we see in San Diego, especially probably Southern California, people move, and I'd love to ask you about this, people moving from the Bay Area out of, once people knew that they could go and work remote, they're like, heck, I could sell my 1,500 square foot house in the Bay Area and come buy a 3,000 square foot in San Diego, pay cash, and you're you know, you're doing well. And so, you know, I've heard from other real estate agents that's happening a lot. You have cash buyers coming in from the tech industry and paying cash for houses, and then, you know, in San Diego and Southern California, and there's a movement, right? There's a migration from in LA too. Like a lot of people were a little upset about all the, you know, restaurants being closed when San Diego's were open or Orange counties were open, and there's like, I'm gonna move down here where it's a little more free. And
I agree, and I have seen that, and it's fun to work for those clients because $1.5 million to them is not $1 million what it is to maybe somebody else here locally, right? Because they're coming from a more expensive climate, and you nailed it. I mean, it's whether it's LA, San Francisco, Vancouver, I'm watching those people come here and they think everything's on sale.
They're like, oh, by the beach, I can get something for this. You're like, what? That's
when everyone else is competing on a price, you know, they'll just come in and slap an extra 50 cash on top or whatever the number might be.
Are you still seeing that over asking, like big jump numbers jump?
A lot. The strategies that we've had to employ to get our buyers in on those deals have been fun to kind of observe, create, develop. We've just gotten real creative with that. But, you know, it's still a battle. Yeah. And if you have the listings, you know, they always say in residential real estate, if you have the listings, the buyers will come. Yeah. And it's more true than it's ever been right now. So the buyers that we're working with, we really more than ever make sure they're qualified and action ready. Right. Otherwise, you're just really spinning your wheels, wasting time, and you feel bad.
Frustrating. Yeah, I can't imagine being a real estate agent with a buyer that's like a veteran that has zero down, or a you know, first time home buyer with 3.5% down. Like, they're just not getting acceptance. Right.
It's hard to compete, but with a good lender behind them, you know, it definitely helps us circumvent those problems. And I'm also amazed how much favor you can gain by just simply asking questions. It might be, you know, seller motivations beyond just a price. Yeah.
They want to know who's going to live in their house after, maybe, and they're just, it's interesting.
Or they want the lease back. Right. Or they want to sell it furnished. Or they want, you know, to remain in the house for a certain amount of time, well beyond a lease back. I've heard of agents buying cars. I've heard of buyers putting down the seller's deposit on their next home purchase. Wow. I haven't experienced it, but
that's a first from anything I've, you know. I know the letters, right? Here's our family. Here's a photo of our family, right? Like, and then agents were like, no, you can't put a photo because what if there's like a, you know, race issue, or what if, you know, there's all these. And then the next thing was, you know, was I mean, that was all I really knew, and that was back in like 2005 that was happening, and even you know, I think a couple of years ago. But to buy a car for someone and put a deposit, like, that's some wild stuff.
It is. I think a good example, I'm thinking of my book of business. I helped some gentlemen that had moved from San Francisco down. They were willing to pay $1.5 million for this home. It was listed like $1.3 million, and they incentivized the seller by offering them, it was about $25,000, and they, instead of offering it to the seller, they offered it to the listing agent, exclusive.
Really?
Must be to the agent. And basically the agreement was, if we offer this money to you, then we expect that you tell us at the last moment, when all the other counteroffers are due, what that final and best price is, and we'll match it.
Wow.
So sure enough, it came back. It was like $1,410,000, and so they ended up saving
What was the listing
$90,000. It was about $1,300,000, give or take. There was 9 offers.
Wow.
And so I guess it's
instead
just
of them offering 1.5,
exactly,
they got the win-win, right?
Yeah.
The agent got extra money, and
I assure you they would have bought a car if they had to for them, but their goals were met.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, it's crazy thinking, and rents are way up, right? Like, so you can't rent, especially coastal, you definitely could pay a mortgage much cheaper than a rent, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Not enough people are talking about rents. They are sky high right now.
Yeah.
I have listed, I try to stay away from them, to be honest, but I have a lot of clients that I care about, and will definitely do that for them. And each rental I've posted this year, which has admittedly been maybe 4 or 5, we're getting way over market rent, way over, all up front. You have a pet,
like they'll pay the whole year.
Yeah.
They'll just be like, all right, well, how about we just pay the whole year in rent?
That's
up
it.
Front. Wow.
And a lot of it is school driven, right? We time them around when the school year starts. But
they want to be at a good school and zone, and makes sense.
When there's a lot of people that cashed out, right? I couldn't believe my house would be worth $2 million. I must sell, and they do.
And they're stuck.
They're stuck because there's only 3 or 4 rentals on the market in whatever neighborhood, and they end up bidding each other out, and it's crazy what we're seeing out there. But I'm thinking of 2 examples. One was in Rancho Santa Fe. I think we had it listed for $6,000, which was lofty.
Yeah.
It was a townhome. And we had so many applicants that, we were getting teary calls, just, convicted, talking about why they need this home. Another one was in Carlsbad. That was a big, nice house. And really, we were just trying to buy time by putting a tenant in place while my Canadian clients were trying to come down during the COVID climate. And similarly, it rented for, I want to say 30% above, and people just begging for the home.
Wow.
So we're also undersupplied on rentals as well.
Jeez, so what do you think is causing that? Because it wasn't like that. Did all of a sudden a bunch of people move here? Like what?
Yeah, I think it's people that are trying to recognize their gains, that they've decided to sell. They're trying to time the market right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you agree, but I feel like I am, and many people I know are a bit calloused by what we went through.
Yeah.
10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we think it's got to happen again.
Right.
And so we cash out, and next thing you know, you're leaving money on the table. You're bleeding money in rent.
Right.
But I do still have a lot of people that believe they should not own their primary residence. They always rent your primary, and then own other assets that are cash flow. So
that's a big Grant Cardone thing. He's super big on that. Which
yeah.
I never really, and I think even Gary Vee talked about that, and I always disagreed with that because I'm like, I've made so much money on my primaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the money's going to, who knows, it could go to a better investment or whatever. But I mean, in real estate, because of inflation and just the appreciation, it's always made me the most of my money was made because I bought my primary, lived in it, and then maybe rented it out later, and then bought another primary, but I get why they say not to do that, but I think rents are so high that you're just burning money.
I agree. I did that. I employed that idea until I got married. So the reason I wouldn't do it now is I don't want to uproot my kids.
Right.
Right? Like we have memories in our home, and I'd hate to think that, our landlord calls and says, I'm sorry, I need you to move out in 3 months.
Yep.
Like, what would you do? So that's why I haven't, but, it's something interesting.
Plus you can improve your home, right? Like you can add stuff to it, put a pool in, but I have a friend that just happened to where the landlord just called and said, hey, you got a month. And they're like, what do we do? And then they look around and the rents are so much higher.
Yeah.
And then, buying a house is crazy and just wait. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, concept of, the different people who agree or disagree with that concept,
Yeah. It's been fun to watch. That's for sure, man.
For sure. What about foreign investors? You seen that?
Not as much as I used to. Now, my good buddy who's in the luxury space, he's seeing a lot of it.
Okay.
But no, nothing beyond Canada, really.
Yeah, the Canadians are like, get me out of this totalitarianism. I mean, I don't know if you've watched what's going on in Canada, but like, I'm glad we're in America.
I've been reading a little bit about it.
Yeah.
But my clients who are from there have been telling me a little bit as well. So
Yeah.
we're lucky to be dealing with it. It was funny though, during COVID, John, when we closed this transaction, they bought it sight unseen, this beautiful home in Carlsbad.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't come here to sign escrow docs, right? And nor could the notary go back and forth. But there's this little bridge of some kind. I forget where it is, and I probably should have looked it up.
On the border?
Yeah, right on the border. It's like they can't. It's somehow
They can't really cross it, but it's like a neutral zone.
That's it. It's like a neutral zone. That's it. It's like a 50-yard circle of a park, and so we had the notary go take care of the docks. It was awesome. And then,
That's cool.
And then of course we bought the house. Those are the ones we put the tenants in, and they finally came down at the end of last year to enjoy the house on their own. So
Wow.
yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, we go down to Mexico when we go to vacation, and a lot of the Mexican nationals there are like, there's no Canadians. They just can't leave. They can't go. They can't fly out of Canada to go to Mexico or Cabo or wherever, right?
Yeah.
And so I just was like, wow, that's just, I would not want a president telling me I can't leave the country to go somewhere.
Yeah. And these clients that I'm speaking of have the resources to fly, or take their boat wherever they would like. And they were still pinched as well. And they felt that the control had been taken from them, and a lot of frustration as a result.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, I get you want to be, safe and all that, but it's like, wow. So what about people leaving San Diego, California? You getting any listings of people saying, I'm out of here, I'm going to Texas, I'm going to Florida, I'm going to Tennessee or Idaho, wherever?
Yeah, Arizona even. Of course, that now is just blown up. The clients that I have that are doing that are generally pretty wealthy, right?
Yep.
And they're trying to mitigate their taxable income,
right,
or whatever it might be. But yeah, there's some people that have just kind of been saying, look, I'm fed up with this. I don't like it. There's a better quality of life elsewhere. I mean, I think, of course, Austin, Texas, that's an obvious one.
Right.
But
people like Joe Rogan moved there. And,
yeah.
What was it? Elon Musk, I think, too.
Yeah. I think he moved Tesla over there. But, Abe Woody, he's generally from that general area. And he just said it's incredible that you can get a gorgeous home, and that, there's a diverse economy, and there's just a lot of opportunities out there, that, there's good spirits.
Yeah.
And you don't have a telephone pole in your front yard on a $2.5 million house, things like that. So
interesting.
Yeah, I've seen it a little bit, but maybe not as much as some of the other agents in town.
Yeah, you wonder if if it's across the board, or if it demographically, or if it's more middle class, or if it's upper. But you said tax reasons, so I get it. Like you have we're getting taxed so much here, plus the gas prices and
it would be hard. I mean, if I had that amount of wealth that some of my clients do, that would be a real
significant.
problem.
It'd pay for the house that you would move to,
for sure,
much.
And almost would affect another generation. Right now, they may have 2 or 3 generations covered, but after taxes, only one, so they want to leave town.
Yeah. So COVID was scary for especially for our business.
Yeah.
We halted for we never really shut down the company, but we halted the lending of what we were doing for months, like 3 months. It was really crazy. What happened for you, like in the real estate side?
Yeah.
During that like 2020 March through like June time, was that?
I remember specifically writing an email to my agents saying, buckle up. Yeah. This is going to get bad.
Yeah.
And boy, was I wrong.
Nobody knew. Nobody knew.
Well, no one knew. And, actually, I want to give you a pat on the back during that time, too. I was speaking with Chad, your partner, and I heard, you guys have just done incredible things since then. You really seized the day. And we try to do the same. And, yeah, we were blessed. And a lot of that, return business came back. I think something that really made me feel good during that time was the people that just didn't know what to do. They were actually calling for advice. Yeah. Which is really nice, right? Instead of just looking at me as somebody to peddle houses. Yeah. They trusted it. So
I think I even called you on that during that time. Like, what are you seeing in the market? Like, is there a lot of listings? One of the things first thing that came to my mind was, I think it was probably April or something, or maybe May. And I was like, compared to last year, how many homes are on the market? Because that really was a tell sign for me, was like, if there's double the homes on the market, then we're in trouble. If there's
Yes.
less, then we're fine. Because, you know, if people are panicking and they want to sell their houses, I think before, like with the crash, there was obviously a problem with people's equity. They didn't have anyone that bought in 04, 05, 06 had very little equity because they put, you know, a lot of them put 0 down or 10% or 5% down. Whereas, you know, at this time in 2020, a lot of people had a ton of equity.
I heard like 40% average.
Yeah.
So huge staying
So people
power.
could have sold and just listed their house. And I thought, you know, if it flooded, right, if there was like way too many listings and not enough buyers, boom, it could have shifted our whole, and then it could have fell like a rock. But
Yeah. Looking back at that year, I remember thinking it was probably going to be a tough year on the books.
yeah,
And it most certainly was not. And then I kept thinking that might stop and halt in this year. But I've observed that the agents in San Diego, I've heard there's like 33,000 of us.
wow,
Yeah, which
a
is
lot.
nuts. But the ones have really succeeded. We were talking about a few names earlier who they've pivoted, they've adapted, and you know they've embraced the change,
Right.
and done their best to help figure it out. And some of the strategies that have come out of it, and a sales strategy we'll call it, have been really fun to watch. And now
Yeah.
you've got some of this, you know, fintech stuff that's coming in. We now have platforms to help a contingent buyer, you know, sell a house and make it not contingent so they can buy another one.
Right.
There's a lot that's changed and adapted and come from that.
That's cool. So, 2022, God, I can't believe it's literally 30 days away as of today. Or not even 30 days. I think it's 29, but, yeah, where did these 2 years go? Flew by.
It's very true. It feels like 6 months ago. And I'll tell you, on the way here, by the way, I heard a song that I
Yeah.
really like, you know, the group Arizona.
Yeah.
That song came out like right when COVID started. And to this day I hear it and it just warms my heart because of how much life slowed down for about a month.
Yeah.
Right?
You got to hang out with the kids a little more.
Yeah.
And,
And be present.
Right.
You know, and put the anxiety away. But yeah, where's it's gonna go? Boy,
Like, what are your predictions? You think, I mean, you know, we all have our own crystal balls that we guess, but do you see the demand still there for 2022?
I see a big demand,
Yeah.
honestly, for non-QM loans. I
Yeah.
feel like there is such an inadequacy in that niche.
Yeah.
Not only do my clients need it, I need it, right?
Yeah.
As a small business owner, I'm
Right.
shocked how many solutions are not available. It
Right.
seems to be, you know, from either the Fannie Freddie product all the way to private money. You go from
Right.
3% to 12%. It's like there's got to be something in there.
Right.
We're writing an offer today for a client on a $5 million plus home. And, you know, you look at his financials from a conventional standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. All
Right.
the K1s, et cetera. But boy, you put it in front of someone like you and it makes perfect sense. So I think there's going to be a change in that space. Rather, I hope there will be a change in that space.
You mean like more lenders will start offering non-QM, or you think conventional lenders will loosen? Like, what do you mean? Like,
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
I hope maybe they will consider lending on other collateral,
yeah,
right?
like mixed use or
Some, yeah.
Yeah,
Any other
multifamily
assets they have. Just seems like there's a big need there.
yeah. Are
I'm
you talking
also,
about cross collateral?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's something that not very many people do.
Yeah.
Cross collateral loans, because I think there's a need there, right? If someone's going to list their house, and then maybe like a bridge need, or if they have a ton of equity in one of their properties, and then they want to access it, but they don't want to touch their 2.5% rate that they locked in,
Yes.
and they need to get some of that access to equity.
I'm dealing with it on my own, really,
Yeah.
right now. Like I need a bigger home for my family.
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
challenges in front of me. And I have great banking relationships and I have friends like you.
Yeah,
Yet it's still incredibly challenging to do.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's a need there. And I'm hoping all of this kind of adjustment in some of the offers, I think of like HomeLight. Are
Yeah.
you familiar with those
Yep.
guys? They're actually wonderful. And I'm lucky to be a partner of theirs here. But things are happening quickly.
talk about HomeLight, because I don't know if a lot of people know about them. Is it the concept where they buy your property cash or something like that, and then
Yeah. If I had to simplify it, they came around 3 years ago, we'll call it, give or take, maybe 4.
Yeah.
But it's often we get calls like, hey, do you want leads?
Yeah.
Right? They're $500 each or whatever. And I would always tell them, hey, if you want me to buy these leads, like, why wouldn't you just ask for a referral fee?
Right.
It's $1 million home. Referral fee is going to pay them a lot of money.
A lot more, yeah.
And I would just say, look, that shows me you're invested in the results.
Quality lead. Yeah.
Quality leads. And so HomeLight, sure enough, came out and did just that. So it kind of perks my interest. And then they have really started taking market share. They partner with agents that are, I don't know what the number would, we'll call it the top 10%, 3,300 of us instead of 33,000.
Yeah.
And they send us leads, right?
Nice.
And they have a great platform, and we kick those referral fees over with a smile. But then as things have started to develop, they now have a program that allows my buyers and sellers, like I have this gentleman in San Marcos who wants to buy a $3.5 million home in Del Mar, and he must sell 2 homes in San Marcos to get there.
Okay.
So they have valued the home. He told me that he would take $1.4 million. I thought I could sell for maybe $1.45 million. HomeLight did their homework. They said, we'll give you $1.425 million, now allowing you to buy your home on the back end. Mm-hmm. So
does that take away those listings from you, though?
No, great question. Rather, what it'll do is HomeLight gives them 85% of that money, mm-hmm. buy their new home, and then they list the home with me or whichever agent brought it. And then the seller collects the delta less. It's a 1.5% fee.
Got it. So HomeLight makes a percentage of the one you said, the 1.5.
1.5.
Got it. And then you still make your portion of it, or
yeah. And then ideally, if I sell it for $1.425 million or $1.45 million, my client actually collects more.
Great.
So in the most simplistic sense, in my opinion, in this competitive climate, it's worth paying $1.5 million to get that advantage. But there's a few of us per HomeLight. There's 15 of us in San Diego that have access to that. I'm in the midst of that one I just referenced, and I have not closed another one yet. So I don't quite know if it's going to pan out, but it's been a neat experience. They're confident, they're curious, and they're well resourced, and they try to fly under the radar too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, Zillow doesn't.
No.
Zillow. Talk about Zillow, because I know they just changed their Zestimate, right? Did they do away with the Zestimate, or what's all that about?
Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah, dude.
Our mutual friend, Ryan, out of Point Loma, Zillow. Okay, so we used to manipulate the market, the Zillow platform back in the day. When we had a listing come up, we would post it on Zillow early, kind of feed the market. You're trying to get the unrepresented buyers is all.
Right.
And so I made a post on Zillow, and somehow the listing duplicated, and one of them said it has a basement, 800 square foot basement. So this home sells then for about $1,000 a foot to said buyer. A month later, he comes back and says, I looked at the listing on Zillow. You said it has a basement. It doesn't. I want $800,000.
What?
So common sense, I said, look, you visited the home. You did inspections. You knew full well there was no.
You got an appraisal on the place. Like all the things, yeah.
Yeah, he was coming after his own agent and me. And so, of course, we had to hire the attorneys to defend it. But it was all because of Zillow. And when I called Zillow to try to, figure out where the disconnect was, they loosely told me that, look, we're an entertainment site. We're not a data site.
We're an entertainment site? What?
So that was my first revelation that, might be a liability there. So I got away from it. But nonetheless, I know they have made a tremendous positive influence on a lot of other agents' books of business. But at that point is when I decided to walk away. I noticed the estimates changed when they started buying houses. They went way down. Oh, yeah,
because they wanted to buy the market, right?
Yeah.
And are they selling now? Is there something like I heard they're selling a bunch of homes, or?
Yeah, I don't know is the short answer. Yeah. I do know that they turned into a brokerage about a year ago.
Yeah.
And so a lot of agents kind of shied away from it a little bit. But they're still, dominating in the market.
Yeah.
And like it or not, they're there. But yeah, now that they've turned off their iBuyer program and admitted kind of defeat that they had, bought these homes for way more than they were worth. I don't know where they're going to pivot to next. And they're definitely a force to be reckoned with.
For sure. So technology in general in this space is trying to disrupt, right? Like they like any industry. Do you see any technologies coming out that are disruptive to real estate?
That's another really great question. I just attended a conference in Vegas about a month ago, and this is what it was all about.
Yeah.
And on paper, there's some wonderful ideas, wonderful platforms. It seems that it would be a no-brainer, but the one piece that keeps halting it, or rather proves it wrong, is relationships.
Yep.
So,
And it's emotional. It's not just you're buying even cars are emotional, but like, let's just say buying groceries, right? Now we do that technology Instacart, right? Or
totally.
food is not really emotional. It's a little emotional, but it's easy and it's not a major decision. Like homes is that's one of the biggest decisions anyone makes in their life. So keep chatting. I just wanted to interject that, but
well, especially when somebody doesn't know an area or a neighborhood or a
Right.
city, they need a consultant, an advisor.
in schools and
Yeah.
what's everything. Yeah, that's so important nowadays.
Yeah. And so for that single reason, the value of relationships and the trust, I don't see one of those platforms like dominating in the next 10 years. I do expect some serious pushback continued on commissions though.
Yeah.
Because
They're trying to and they don't. We're not discount agency, but we they try to sell you that they're not. But no one can get what you pay for in this life, right?
That's right.
And if you're getting a 1% commission, you're not going to have someone trying to sell it as someone that gets a 2.5 or whatever.
You're just not. That's the fact. I mean, technically, it's illegal if they were to not, or it's unethical if they were to steer someone away from a property with a lower commission. But I'm seeing it happen, and I always respect a broker and agent that's open to that conversation in a constructive, collaborative manner, because it's real. I read a funny subreddit last night about tipping at a restaurant. Mm-hmm. A guy said, look, I had a $300 bill, but I tipped a $20, and you would think all of the people were against him, and he was rude and an idiot. And his logic was, hey, whether I'm at this nice restaurant or another, that person did the same amount of work. Therefore, he should be grateful for $20.
Right.
And it's no brainer. That applies
and
to our industry.
They weren't grateful.
No, they weren't at all. And so, we're constantly striving to prove that value.
Yeah.
Right. And I have always, it's an uncomfortable conversation. I have to have them probably once a month where a client will say, look, if I'm not going to hire you, then I'll hire someone else. I'm going to pay the flat fee. And I know that I'm going to get them more money.
Yeah.
But I can't quantify and prove that.
Yeah.
Right. Until the transaction is done.
Yeah.
So I see some changes coming up on that front. Transparency has been
more like flat fee commissions versus like percentages, or
and how I've adapted to it as the broker of record. I've come up with a scalable commission structure. I generally start it by saying, John, what do you think your house is worth? What do you want? And then I'll base it on that. If it sells for this amount, I get less or this much more. I've heard of other agents doing a spread. In other words, you say, Jeff, I'll take $2 million for my home. And they'll say, all right, well, I think I can get 2.2. So we'll split the difference. And the client says, fine, do it. It's a risk, right?
Yeah.
And no big corporate broker of record would allow that. But we're just trying to get a little bit more creative. And I'm always very sensitive to that. I've always tried to, not be motivated by the money. On the other hand, it's common sense. That's why we do what we do. That's why I left the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
So it's, again, transparency, ethics, communication is how we're addressing those issues. And I tend to fault on the more generous side if it ever gets too sticky.
Well, you look at long term, right? You short-sighted people want the money, all of it now, and they don't care about long-term relationships. They don't care about repeat business. So if you have that mindset of I'm going to do long-term business and make clients for life, then you don't care if you only make a little bit on this deal and you're going to make more on the next, or repeat business always is the best method of growing your business.
Well, and a lot of these people, they do trust us.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm amazed how many agents aren't cognizant of the idea that if you try to bust me up on commission and I roll over to get the listing, I really just showed you what a bad negotiator I am.
Yeah. And now, what, you're going to let me list your house?
Exactly. Whereas they think, no, I'll take the 1% of a $2 million home all day.
Yeah. That's true.
Usually get what you pay for, and the scalable structure allows that.
Right. Well, you just mentioned PGA Tour. Tell us, what's it like? What's the similarities like of PGA? You were managing it, right? You were like an operations manager or something.
Yeah.
And you dealt with a lot of people, some professionals, some probably childish, all the different personalities that come along with people that have a lot of money. And how did that help you or hurt? What was the transition like going into real estate from that?
Yeah, it was fascinating, and a kind of look at the PGA Tour as a franchise in that whether the tournament is in Hawaii or Kansas or Florida, it's just the same general idea. You get volunteers to do the logistics. You pick a good golf course, you run the show for 5 days, and then it generates a lot of money for the local economy, primarily through pro-am sales or advertising or hospitality. And so to see that was interesting. Now, one of the biggest reasons I love golf to this day is that there's no contracts. These players, old, young, male, female, they have to play well to keep their card. The top 125 players get to keep their cards. So it's not uncommon to meet a guy who made $1.5 million last year, and this year he's totally unemployed, or vice versa. But to kind of further answer your question, one of the more interesting pieces of these golf tournaments, I would show up and have to run the on-site event or the management component. So I would meet these volunteers. Now you think about the average person that can leave Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from their job to spend their time. They're usually either, old and retired,
right,
or financially independent.
Yeah.
And so what I learned from these people was fascinating and really perked my interest. And there was definitely a moment that I realized, being around all that I was, that this is super cool. It's great to show people these photos and tell these stories, but I'm still going back to my cheap hotel.
Yeah.
It's still looking at my bank account that
right.
didn't have much in it. And so, yeah, that the spirit of watching these players defend themselves and to work hard to get back there, and to see these volunteers that had worked hard to be able to do what they do, which is walking around and helping these players because they're successful, really stirred me up. And so when I left that position, I remember thinking very consciously, like, I could give a crap about the attention. I don't want to be, known for anything special, because I kind of felt like I'd had that, and it didn't cash any checks for me.
Right.
It was really fun to talk about with a lot of people. They loved hearing Tiger Woods stories or whatever. So when I went into this, it was like, I really want to help people. I want to be financially independent, and I want to be in control. I also didn't like the corporate structure of it all.
Yeah.
So I'm much more comfortable where we were, or where I am now. But it was an awesome job. And to this day, here we are, 15 years later, still talking about it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Have you had any of those pros call you to buy them a house in San Diego?
Unfortunately not, but I have reached out.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not true. I have helped 2 of them.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's kind of flavor of the month stuff. We hear about all the big names, but most guys don't stick around for 3 to 4 years.
Right.
And even then, they're making a couple million a year. I mean, that's a good living.
Right.
Make enough money and kind of move on to selling real estate or insurance.
Getting into some other business. Yeah,
exactly.
That's a little more sustainable and less unpredictable, I guess. Yeah. So our listeners and viewers are mortgage brokers primarily, and mortgage industry people. Obviously, the go-to referral source is a real estate agent, right? That's like when you get in the mortgage business, you're like, oh, I need realtors. That's like your number one thing, right? I need to have 5 realtors. They all got to give me their buyers, and so I can pre-qual them, and they come and kiss your ass. They do all the stuff to try to get you to work with them, right? What have you experienced in that side from mortgage brokers? Like, what's turned you off? What's been, things that they've done right to make a good partner,
Sure.
For mortgages?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I would say we deal with the exact same challenges, right? We very loosely, I'll even lump escrow and title reps into it. We all provide a service that other people can do the same, and so what makes it different? So flipping the script, when I go to financial advisors or mortgage professionals and try to get their business, I literally try to walk and talk and dress like them. I figured that's kind of a subconscious comfort zone.
Yeah.
I'm very hyper attentive to the reputation that they have, and doing all that I can to fall in line with whatever the experience they want for their clients. But now flipping it back to me, there are some wonderful professional mortgage people out there, but much like real estate, a lot of them don't do a lot of business, and they don't quite know how to communicate in an effective manner. They're not able to pivot and adapt to personality types, for example. The ones that I have been lucky enough to work with, they're usually very professional.
Yeah.
They're problem solvers. They're makers and not takers.
Yep.
they admit when they don't know, or they
Yeah.
admit when they've messed up. It's literally just the foundation, the fundamental things that I think we've all learned from our parents at some point. But they're people that I always like to work with, people that are obviously smarter than me, know more than me, and that bring a flavor to the table, and they're not just kind of paper pushers, right?
Right.
Like so many of us are. So when you meet a good quality mortgage professional, it's gold. Now the challenge is that a lot of clients come with their financing already in place.
True.
Or their friend of a friend is a mortgage advisor. So I'll usually try to say, look, I'm not trying to steer you away from them, but why don't you, consider
At least talk to so-and-so or
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than getting at the last minute. Earnest money is gone, has been released, and now it doesn't work. And even though it's not my fault necessarily, I definitely still look like the a-hole. So.
Right. 'Cause you don't want to refer them to the wrong person. And then, have you had any mortgage brokers do something just totally stupid, where you're just like, they came up to you, brought you donuts, and just shit the bed, just didn't do it?
Yeah, I had this one who came in with the sexiest pitch I've ever heard. And I mean, he said everything I wanted to hear. And admittedly, I was probably vulnerable to it because I needed that so bad. Mm-hmm. But I then put one of my highest valued clients in front of him to test it out.
Yeah.
And I got permission from that client. I told him exactly what I was doing. Is like, let's see if this guy's really all about it. So we literally get down to the last hour, all contingencies removed, and he can't perform. Jeez. 1 day before closing.
Wow. Yeah.
I was livid. And so sure enough, my client called his personal banker and they funded within 1 day.
Holy crap. Wow.
So he was like,
he was like testing, he was testing
cute.
This person out and see if you could do that. And then if I had to fund it, I can do it here. But
the other thing that really kills me, John, is when they don't pick up their phone. Oh my goodness.
That's a huge no-no.
Yep. I'm getting lit up by my client or by escrow and I can't even get a hold of them. And I also love is when the mortgage advisor makes me think, my client think that we're the only deal that they have.
That's a talent.
Yeah, it is. Like, I don't need you to tell me why you were late because you're working on another file. Like, I'd rather you not tell me that.
Yeah. Yep. Keep that to yourself.
Yeah. And then gifts. That's how I set myself apart is when someone sends me a lead, I'm always trying to be pretty generous with gifts.
Yeah.
Please hear me. I'm not asking for that.
No, but like appreciation, right?
That's it.
And that's an old school thing is like, we would give out like a champagne bottle at a closing, but like, how often you brought a gift today, which is, I don't know if that's ever happened, maybe one time with all my podcast guests, but like, that's an old school thing, right? Like it's what, your parents teach you, you hope. Yeah. When you go to someone's house for dinner, you bring something, right? You bring a bottle of wine, or you bring, a whatever, or you ask if I can bring something. But I think so many people have forgotten that little touch.
Yeah,
it stands out, right? Like
it does. And I've actually invested in that pretty heavily. Our latest effort is bikes. I bought 15 electric bikes.
Really?
Yeah. And it sounds maybe excessive, but if just do the quick math and some of the support these people have given me, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
And it's memorable and it's fun.
Well, every time they're sitting on it, they're like, "Oh, Jeff, Jeff gave me this."
Yeah, totally. And they're like bright red and I got a logo on them. But they're super fun.
That's cool.
But I've always tried to be that way, John. And it's whether it's a hospitality suite at the Farmers Insurance Open or the awesome front row tickets that I'm lucky enough to share with Chad.
Yeah.
Anything else I can think of. If I know somebody has a specific cause, like we offered to buy a client a table at a charity event of something that was very important to them. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't cheap, but we do it, to say thank you and to show some gratitude. So, and I'm also amazed. I initially thought, like, if you helped me make 10 grand, that I would give you 1,000 or 2,500 of it.
Sure.
Just in general. But a lot of people, they don't necessarily want the money.
Right.
Either they're worried about the ethical component of it, but just to give them something unique, especially people that can afford to buy whatever they want. Yeah. Like a stay at the Hotel Del. A set of Titleist golf clubs.
Right.
These little things. So anyway, I've had a lot of fun doing that and showing gratitude. But I think that's how, in this hyper-competitive space, again, mortgage, real estate agent, title escrow, that's how we can stand apart. Authenticity, recognizing, what other people have done for us.
That's cool. So I'm a huge believer in that too, gratitude, and then just, being generous, because it's something that just, I don't know what it is about life, right? Like if you hold on to everything and you don't give and you don't, share, like it just eats you up inside, or just some people are built that way, right? They're very stingy or whatever it is about them. They're just personality. But I think there's something about the gratitude and the gifting and giving. Do you think that also helps with your success? As like, there's a lot of books you could read about that, but as far as like giving and like even the Bible, right? Give you I forget the scripture. I should know it.
No, so do I. But I totally.
But like
agree
what I'm
with
saying, like if you give it, it'll come back to you or whatever. And not that you do it for that reason, but it just somehow works that way.
Yeah, and I'm kind of at the chapter now where all of what you said is true, and it's like, am I now giving things away because I want the benefits? Right.
It's a slippery slope, right?
Yeah, the biblical component was great. Growing up, it was always an obligation. You must tithe.
Yeah, you got to give 10%.
Right. Yeah. And then you get older and you realize it's actually just an easier way to live. I think it was Louis C.K., the comedian, who generally said it's not my money, it's the money.
Yeah.
I just happen to have some and it goes away. And so that mindset has really helped me.
Right.
And has been just so blatantly obvious in my life.
Yeah.
And things that I really don't even like to talk about because I don't want to take away from that like experience and the faith that I don't want to do it for the attention per se, but that mind shift is big and it's powerful. And I think it's critical for someone to really kind of go from one level to the next. It's not like, oh, how can I save more and make more? It's how can I add value?
Yeah. And you always were a big believer in life coaches or business coaches, stuff like that. I think that's something that everyone can look at, right? It's like you want to improve your business. Like tell us about that. Has that changed your business, having a business coach or life coach?
Oh, that's a great question. I just hired a new one, the most expensive one I ever have. Because I believe in it so much. And it's always, I'm sure most people would say this, it's nothing profound that they share. It's rather a little creative, or it's the accountability they're bringing. Or it might be that one nugget that you got, from a month of investing with them. The other one I actually really advocate for is counseling.
Yeah, same here.
Counselors are a huge luxury in life. And some of the things that I've learned about myself, kind of being vulnerable and exploring, have been life-changing.
Yeah. Otherwise, you bottle it all up.
You do, and you
because
don't realize.
There's things you can't tell even your best friend. I mean, not
right.
darkness, but like thoughts or feelings that you just can't really share with everybody, right? And you don't want. We all have stuff that we sort of keep to ourselves, but it gets bottled up. It causes stress. It causes other things that are not good in our life. And like you said, I mean, I found the same thing. Therapist, counselor, whatever. When you can just share and talk about issues, it just somehow, it's almost like that giving thing. It's like you're letting it out so then you can be refilled with something else, right? It's like
and you've always been really good at that. I'll call it authenticity, vulnerability. It takes a lot of confidence to be that way. And I'm kind of at the point in my life where if someone isn't that way towards me, I just don't really want to be around them.
Yeah.
Right? Because we all have problems and you have solutions that I don't. And it's just been a more, I keep using the word rich in experience. It's a rich way to live. And so I encourage that of agents that join our company as well, is you have to have a degree of faith, of vulnerability, because we're all salesmen. And it comes across super disingenuous at times, and that will kill your business.
Right.
So I'm always trying to be that way. The older I get, the more I lean on others in the counseling, the coaching.
Well, we just learn that life, it's short. Life is not perfect and it's hard. There's challenges and
we're middle-aged.
Yeah.
I used to think, hey, when I get there, right now you're like,
I'm here. You have a couple grays. I don't really see.
Whatever.
I don't see many, but I'm a little further along with the grays than you are. But I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff on this podcast. I think, what would you have any? One of the things I love to share is ways that someone can reach someone like you, right? Like you appreciate the non-QM. You appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking, the genuine, person that's not just trying to get a one deal from you, or maybe someone who can reciprocate business to you. Is there advice or a tip you can tell a mortgage broker right now that might change their business? Like, is there something you could?
Boy, that's a lot of pressure, but I like it. I
Yeah.
like it, right? Because we're all again in this hyper-competitive, saturated space,
Yeah.
and there's nothing better than having relationships.
Yeah, and
right?
just being genuine.
Just being genuine.
People want to work with people they like.
Yeah,
And if you're
big
just
time.
if you're just coming to someone to get something, I think that's always when people put up a shield, right?
Well said. I
Like
agree.
on a call, like a, what do you call them, telemarketer call,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
First thing you're like, I'm busy, but if they, there's ways that people can bring down your shield, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah, the event hosting is always good. But, let's be honest, at a certain point in a career, you hit a point where you don't have to do that anymore.
right.
And so then what sets it apart? And so for me, it's like a charity effort. I meet someone who's like-minded.
Right.
Or maybe it's through your EO group. You
Right.
meet someone you really like, and they're talented, and they're good at what they do.
You become friends.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of naturally occurs out of that, right?
And what's interesting then to take that a step further is you find you don't end up going to anyone else.
Yeah.
Like, of course I could shop it around, but I don't want to because I
Yeah.
like that guy or
Right.
that person.
And they're going to be honest with you. They're not there to just burn bridges or, to say that they can do something they can't. Because where your point was, they went all the way to the finish line, and then one day before closing, they couldn't do it. And
That's
you'll
it.
never use that person again.
Even close to it. The other piece is, doing coaching. What I found, I won't say any coaches' names, but they tell the same agents the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll end up seeing everyone doing that same thing. What used to be unique. Like
Yeah.
I remember the first time I rented out a pumpkin patch. It was like, whoa, he did that for his clients. And, and I looked around and realized everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
So then we bought a drone and kind of did some things with that for promotions. But as a mortgage professional, you want to, maybe you're new in the business or you're used to be good in another city and you don't know anyone here, is like find that organic connection.
Yeah.
And it might be stopping by the office. It might be that super awkward thing. But boy, if there's that mutual connection, like there's a website, been verified, that I will type in, like I could look you up right now and
Sure.
find out where you went to school, possibly, charities you support. And maybe that's the connection. But if you dig deep enough, I think you can typically figure that out.
That's cool. Well, where can someone find you online?
Yeah. SandandSeaInvestments.com. Because I was so tired of spelling that out. I also have keytosd.com.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
KEYTOSD.com. And I would love to hear from anyone. There is no price point that's too high or too low.
Yeah.
Good quality people that need help are the ones that I like to help most.
That's cool. And anything you're listening to or using to learn more and to enrich yourself, like maybe anything you can share?
Yeah,
Like
don't
books
laugh
or-
at this answer though,
Yeah.
okay? Because I don't like reading very much. Subreddits.
Okay.
You get on Reddit and type in, realtors or real estate, and you'll see some really intriguing ideas that are posted anonymously. It's one of the reasons I love that site. It's not self-promotion. That's where I've gotten a lot of good ideas from. I had a digital listing presentation, for example, way before COVID started. Well, not way before, but before no one else was doing it. They were still doing these hardbound covers.
Yep.
So I would get little ideas from that. But that's it with the coaching and, good friends like you that have been tremendously successful. I tend to kind of get those needs met.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man. It's
You're
been
welcome.
great.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Cool.